Hello and good evening, everybody. So welcome to DCAGT Live. I want you all to know that we are recording this session. It's going to be available to view later on the DCAGT Facebook page, our YouTube channel, our website, as well as the DCSD website. So I'm Becca Coster, and I am going to be your moderator this evening. And I'm the president of DCAGT. So just a little bit about DCAGT before we get started. So DCAGT stands for the Douglas County Association for Gifted and Talented. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we are all volunteer. So we are comprised of family members, of educators, and community members, and we're an affiliate of the Colorado Association for Gifted and Talented. And we all have a true passion for working to advocate for gifted and twice exceptional students in Douglas County. So with that, I will honor your time, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be learning about early access and the young advanced child. And Heather Groff is here with us. She's the team lead on the Advanced Academics and Gifted Education team at DCSD. So she's going to present some information to us. It'll be approximately half of the session or so. And during the second half, we'll open it up for questions and answers. You are welcome to type your questions in the chat at any time. You can also email your questions to info@dcagt.org if you wish to remain anonymous. So we'll go ahead and get started and welcome Heather. Thanks so much for joining this evening, Heather.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is one of my favorite topics, is talking about little advanced and gifted children. So I'm super excited to share with you. Let me get my screen here so that I can share with you.
All right.
Right. Becca, can you see?
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. Well, welcome to Early Access and the Young Advanced Child. Here's my contact information. I'm Heather Groff. I am with a team lead with our Advanced Academics and Gifted Education department. And here's my direct contact information, or you can contact anyone in our department using gifted.education@dcsdk12.org. So first, I'm going to talk to you about early access. And when we're talking about early access, it's early access to kindergarten and early access to first grade. So early access for highly advanced gifted children under the age of 6 is covered by House Bill 08-1021, in case you want to go look it up. It is intended for academically gifted, socially and emotionally mature children that are in the top 3% or less of their gifted peer group. These students are motivated to learn, ready for advanced placement, and they have exhausted the resources of preschool or homeschooling. So the intent when this was put into place was to meet the unique needs of these highly advanced gifted children. And it doesn't permit early access to all gifted children, which we'll talk a little bit later about how we determine that. And that most quality preschool programs will meet the needs of most gifted children. In order to qualify, the student has to be 4 years old by October 1st if they would like to access kindergarten early, or 5 years old by October 1st to access first grade early. So the first part is just some logistical information. So applications are open every school year from January 1st to April 1st. And April 1st is the state deadline. So that's what they recommend, is that's their deadline. All of this is guided by the state. So you would go to our website for the online application, and we'll have a PDF of these slides available to you when we post the video as well. So you can click on that. The application is a short form that you just fill out with some basic information. Then there's a parent survey, which is a longer form. We tell parents that it may take up to an hour to complete the form. So to make sure that you have time to sit down and do it, and it doesn't save in between. So you have to do it all in one session. We require proof of residency. So you have to live within Douglas County School District, within our boundaries. If you live outside of those boundaries but want to come to a Douglas County school, then you would need to apply for early access within their boundaries. There is a fee, and we do have financial assistance available, which is all that information is available on the website as well. After we get the application, then you have a phone conversation with someone from our department. Usually it's me. And then we walk through the process so that you understand kind of what the timing is and all of the steps that come after that. You would be collecting work samples that show advanced capacity or ability or skill to submit with your portfolio. And then we also send the preschool teacher a survey and ask them to collect some evidence as well to give to us as well. The second part is that once we've received the completed portfolio, those are all of the parts that need to happen prior to April 1st. Once the portfolio is complete, then we send you information with one of our school psychologists that has agreed to do some of our early access testing for us. You would set up 2 separate testing sessions. One is for cognitive testing, and the other one is for achievement testing in the areas of reading, writing, and math. And then we also will set up an observation at your child's preschool, and that is part of what we consider for that readiness for school. And then after the results are received, and I generally tell parents it usually takes the psychologist a couple of weeks to type up a report and send it to us. Then we have our educational evaluation team who's been trained to evaluate portfolios of young students and is aware of all of the requirements by the state to review all of the components of the portfolio and the testing results. They compare those results to the qualifications that are set by the state, and then a determination is made and communicated to parents. Generally speaking, if you have everything in by April 1st, we are able to give all of that information by the end of the school year, by the end of May. If you were able to get everything in earlier, then that time frame could be moved up earlier. Excuse me. So these are the early access requirements set by the state. You have to have a 97th percentile or higher on a norm referenced test for reading, writing, and math. So those are the achievement sections. 97th percentile or above on a cognitive assessment. High performance, so it's demonstrated ability, usually about 2 years or more above their same aged peers. So advanced in reading, math, writing, or other skills. And then as far as behavior, that's where that readiness for school comes in. So we use some standardized instruments to help determine those indicators to see where a child falls in readiness for school. So you need all of those in order to qualify for early access. All right, so I would like to shift gears now and kind of talk about characteristics of the young gifted child. And we're going to walk through these as some generalized characteristics and then in some more specific areas. So as far as general characteristics, gifted students or gifted children, even at the preschool age, tend to have very long attention spans and intense concentration in the areas in which they have an interest. It doesn't mean that they have a long attention span when it's something that you want them to do if it's not, their preferred activity. But if it's something that they're really into, maybe they're into Legos or whatever, they will sit there and play for hours. They have a preference for older playmates, just because they might relate to older children a little bit better than maybe their same age peers. Sometimes they have a very early and extensive vocabulary. They often have an excellent memory, and they express curiosity about many things. And often it's not just the why questions, but it's why, and then they're able to connect what you just said to them when you answered why, and then dig a little deeper and continue to dig into that particular topic by asking follow-up questions. So that's what I mean by asking thoughtful questions, that they have taken in that information and they've processed it and then have asked you follow-up questions. Or they look at things around them and connect things that you might not think are obviously connected for a child of that age, and ask questions about that. Even as babies and young, really young children, they have this high level of activity, an unusual amount of alertness. There have even been studies that show that kids who eventually test gifted, qualify in that gifted range, as babies were really unusually engaged and alert and didn't sleep. I know as a parent of two gifted children, my kids hardly ever slept. So that certainly held true for me. They have a rapid learning ability. So think about how you're learning how to do something like tying your shoes or learning how to button. Maybe they only need to do it a couple of times, a few times, and then they've got it. Whereas it may take a lot more repetition for some other children to learn the same thing. We also look at kids who solve those problems in unique ways, thinking about advanced spatial abilities where they can kind of see how things might fit differently. So they look at how to fix a concrete problem by which way something will fit, or maybe we need to move this, or that kind of thing, or thinking more abstractly, really before they're developmentally expected to think in that abstract way. They often have an excellent sense of humor, and sometimes gifted parents will comment about how their children got their adult humor really early on, or how they're able to do puns really early. Sometimes they'll say things like, my kids are gifted in sarcasm at a young age. So those are some ideas that might help you with a sense of humor. They're really good observers when it's something that they're interested in. They note very specific details at a level that you might not expect for their age. They can also show a high degree of sensitivity, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but they could be more intense or more sensitive in some ways, whether it's emotionally, social implications, or physically sensitive. And then they're, like I said before, able to do some abstract reasoning that we wouldn't necessarily think developmentally they might be ready for. There are differences in different cultural and linguistic backgrounds. So when you think about students, when we look at students from different backgrounds in school, we have to keep in mind that some things may be different in their particular culture. So for some examples, adult-directed activities are often encouraged in some cultures where there's a less of an emphasis on that self-exploration. And so taking note of that is one of the things that we look for, and then being able to see how students respond to those adult-directed activities. Individual performance may not be valued over a group performance. Some cultures really value that group participation and group problem solving and group socially getting along and learning those behaviors very early on, and not necessarily focusing on the individual. They also can demonstrate creativity in many different ways. So storytelling, dancing, art, all different kinds of ways to show their creative instincts, and also keeping in mind that humor is culturally based. So depending on the typical, what we would expect from a child of that age, how is that advanced based on their culture. And then we always look at if students have another language at home, even if it's not necessarily their first language, if there is a language of influence in the home, and they're learning another language, what can they do in reading and singing and counting, and how they work through problems. We also notice that in some cultures, there's a difference for that sense of justice and what that might look like. And then there are also some where kids are just not naturally going to raise their hand and advocate for themselves, saying that they need to do something else. This is too easy for me. I need to do something else. They may not advocate for themselves because they respect the teacher and respect the adults in the room, and that is the way that their culture is. So asynchronous development is one of the big ideas around gifted education. And this particular definition comes from NAGC, which is the National Association of Gifted Children. And I'm not going to read this to you because I know that you can read it, but I'll give you kind of what the gist is. So when we think about asynchronous development, it's about a child developing those different parts of themselves at different rates. So for example, a child may be academically or cognitively advanced. So if you have a 4-year-old, they might be able to read or do math like an 8-year-old. There may be a, socially and emotionally, they might be right at their age with making friends. So maybe they're still 4 years old. And physically, they might be taller than their age mates. So maybe they're like a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. But then maybe when it comes to emotionally, they're so emotionally intense that they get overloaded and have temper tantrums like a 2-year-old. So you can see that there's all these different areas of a child's development, and they are developing asynchronously, not together at the same time. And the more gifted a student is or a child is, the more that asynchrony tends to stand out. So one of the questions I get a lot is, so what can I do for my child at home? So I've broken it down into some different areas. For math, one of the things that I recommend is really teaching kids to see the math that is everywhere. Math is something that we all use all the time in our lives. So whether it's going to the grocery store, whether it's saving for something that we want to purchase at a later time, whether it's calculating, different things around the house, how many I'm doing recipes. Maybe I need 3 cans of this and 2 cans of this, and I need, a cup and 2 cups, and those kinds of things are fantastic for children to see that math is just part of our life and it's everywhere. A lot of early math concepts focus around numbers and really that getting that deep number sense. So if your child already has a good sense of those kinds of things, they can count, maybe they can do some addition and subtraction, go deeper into other concepts like money and measurement and time and geometry, shapes, and putting shapes together and thinking about breaking them up into where you start into that fraction piece. If they want to know about higher numerical calculations, it is absolutely fine to teach them. Your child has mastered their math facts. They can do addition and subtraction up to 12 or whatever, and they want to move on to doing double digits and triple digits and all of that. It is absolutely fine to teach them. However, understand that algorithms, which are those math problems, and that computational math is only one part of that foundation of mathematics. And when kids come to school having that background of just that computational math, then it's a lot harder for them to understand going into those other topics and building that foundational piece. So they'll have to understand that, we have to build those as well. For readers, if your child's already reading, we have a lot of children who are good in that fluency area. So they are able to read anything that you can put in front of them. But it's really important to focus on comprehension as well. So reading harder and harder books isn't very beneficial if you're not able to really understand them. So working on fluency and comprehension at the same time. Look at how we figure out unknown words. So what kind of strategies do they use? Do they use phonics to kind of sound words out? Do they chunk it into little words that they know so that they can figure out what an unknown word, not only how to say it, but what it means. Work on retell. what happened in the story? Can they list the characters and the setting and the problem and the solution and the events that kind of took place throughout the story? Are they ask questions? Are they able to understand what is the purpose behind the author writing that story? Are they able to tell you more about nonfiction books that you read? What kinds of questions are they asking that didn't get answered in the text? If your child's not reading, then one of the best things you can do is to model that fluent reading so that they hear fluent readers. Focus on phonics and being able to sound out words. There are also sight words and things that they will need to be introduced to at some point. And then reading and listening should be separated, meaning that they should have times when they read and they should have times when they're listening, so that they can kind of go back and forth and focus on their reading when they're reading and their listening when they're listening. All children benefit from reading aloud. All children can be introduced to complex text that is really based on their interest, so that you are able to model what it's like to search for answers on something that you're looking for, or something that's of interest of for your child. Sometimes when they can read, the books that are at their level are not very interesting. So being able to kind of up that complexity really helps. Play around with different genres. There are books that are mysteries, that are historical fiction, are not just your straight fiction, straight nonfiction. Play around with varied genres. Think about the appropriateness of the content. So, like I said, there are some books out there that children can pick up and read anything, but that may not necessarily be appropriate content for, even though they can decode it. Ask questions. Anytime they ask a question, ask your own questions to dig deeper. And then promote conversations. Learning how to talk about text is one of those great skills for readers. For writers, we often find that our little ones don't quite have the fine motor skills to do writing the way that they would like. So other ways to build writing skills or build those fine motor skills is using Play-Doh, paint, sidewalk chalk, sand, mazes, anything to help them really build on that fine motor skill and being able to control their pencil. For resistant writers, try capturing their ideas first. So in school, we call it oral rehearsal, where they kind of would explain their thinking first. So then that kind of solidifies what they want to do. Sometimes they can draw pictures of it, or maybe just write a keyword down so that they don't forget their ideas before that they start writing. Another thing that's really important for all kids, but particularly those resistant writers, is when you can write for a purpose. So as adults, we write all the time for reasons, not just for pleasure. So think about what we do. We write lists. We may write down how to do something, to give instructions. We might journal. We might write notes or letters, even email or texting to family and friends. Sometimes you could do like an expert nonfiction. So if your child is the expert on dinosaurs, maybe they want to write a book for their younger sibling, or to share in their class, and they can draw a picture of the dinosaur or cut out a picture or find one online, and then write a couple of sentences about that. So that is really purposeful writing, and that helps to get them to buy in. Another key thing to remember is that reversals, where they write their letters backwards, and spelling creatively by thinking about what sounds they hear and writing them out, are perfectly okay. And that is just a normal developmental process. So we don't spend a lot of time worrying about those things early on. If your child has other interests, absolutely pursue those. Read about them. When my children were little, what we did is we called them field trips. And so, for example, my son swore when he was teeny tiny that he was going to be a geologist. And so he was a rock expert. And so every time we went somewhere, we would pick up rocks and compare them to the books that we had and the charts that we had. And then when the Gem and Mineral Show came, we took a field trip, or we would take a field trip to the museum so that we could go look at the rocks and compare them to what we have and what we know and where they're found and all of that kind of thing. Giving them hands-on experiences in whatever those interest areas are. Encourage that creativity and exploration. Right now, these children have time where they can focus on what is interesting and important to them and express themselves however they wish. Sometimes in school, they're limited by having to have a rotation, every 20 or 30 minutes, and they don't get to complete some of the deep level exploration that they would really like. So allowing them to do this at home when they have the time, or can leave all of their things in place and come back to it later, is a wonderful experience for kids. Helping them to figure out how to find the answers to their questions. So again, questioning instead of answering questions for children. And I know a lot of kids that are really adept at using Siri and asking Google for their answers to their questions, but helping them understand, okay, so what is the question? What am I looking for? How can I find it? Is this something I could go to a book for? Is this someone I can ask? Is there someone I can ask? Is there someone that I can connect with? Is there a website? Different ways to find answers, so that it's not always, well, I'm going to have mom tell me the answer, or dad tell me the answer, or my teacher tell me the answer, or I'm always going to ask Siri. Be able to vary how we find answers to our questions, and then seek out those opportunities. Summer is a great time to find summer camp classes, after school type opportunities. Once they're in kindergarten, they'll have a lot more of those to choose from. Seek out experts. If you can find someone who is a scientist in your immediate area, there might be some opportunity there for them to ask questions or learn some particular science from them. So really nurturing those early interests and strengths by making real life connections. So when they have an interest in something, how does that connect to real life? What kinds of careers offer those kinds of opportunities? Where can they find those things? If it's rocks, where are they located in different parts of the world? We got our globe out and we looked, when we found a different rock that says it was from this particular area, where is that area on the map? we spent a lot of time on volcanoes and why this particular volcanic rock was available here, and learning about all of those kinds of things. So making those connections to things in real life. Engaging in questioning, always a really good skill, not only by making them think about their questions, modifying their questions, maybe honing in on exactly what they're asking. You're not only forcing them into thinking about it, but you're also modeling what really good questioning looks like. Model and encourage that learning from mistakes. Many of our advanced and gifted learners are really hesitant to make mistakes. And so being able to have people in their lives who make mistake and then learn from it, and knowing that it's okay to make mistakes, it can be a really big benefit for our gifted kids. And like I had mentioned in math, focusing on the deeper learning rather than rote skills. So just being able to add and subtract isn't necessarily more beneficial. Thinking about how does that adding and subtracting help me figure out real life problems is a deeper learning concept, and much more important in overall building math skills. Think about where your child has challenges and areas of need, and where they need to be challenged cognitively. So if your child is not physically able to write yet, because of just being 3 or being 4 and their fine motor hasn't kicked in, what can you do to support those deeper levels of thinking so that they can have the cognitive challenge they need, but then not to have to rely on writing it down? One of the most important things that parents can do is praise the effort that their child is putting into what they're doing, and not natural smarts. And what happens with gifted students is sometimes they hit a wall at some time in their career and feel like they're not smart anymore because it didn't come naturally to them. So if we teach our children that learning is effort, and we appreciate the effort they put into it, and that it's not leaning on their natural smarts, then that sets them up for success later on down the road. Help them find like-minded peers. So that, again, is seeking out those opportunities to find kids who are all about dinosaurs or all about rocks, or maybe they're some type of artist and they have a particular skill or a particular interest, and find people who are like them. And then talk to your teacher about things that you can do at home to help support your child. Finally, I have some resources for you. The Asynchronous Development by NAGC, it gives some information, a little bit deeper information. There's also early childhood and helping your child succeed, and how do I develop my child, or how do I help my child develop his or her potential? Those are all by NAGC and fantastic resources. Mensa for Kids has a K-3 reading list, and most of them are classic, what we would call classic books. So if you're looking for books that gifted children might really enjoy, that have deeper meaning, then check out that list. Wonderopolis is also a place where it's just really about I wonder questions, and you can type in what you wonder and come up with some responses, and it gives you some places to look. And it's okay to be smart YouTube videos if you're into YouTube videos, or your child is. this is a resource that has a lot of really good, interesting videos that are good for kids. All right, so I hope I didn't take too much time there, Becca.
Oh no, this was wonderful.
So let's see if we have any questions. Hold on, I'm going to stop. There we go.
All right, so please drop your questions into the chat, or you can email your questions to info@dcagt.org, and we can answer those for you. And by we, I mean Heather. And then I would also ask if you could take a moment or two to just give us a little bit of feedback so we can improve our next session. I'm going to drop a link to a survey as well so that we can keep having DCAGT lives and make sure that we bring you the information that you are interested in. So while we're waiting for people to type some questions, Heather, I had a question. So when my child is older now, but when she was little, like if a parent thinks their child might be a good fit for this, but they're not sure, what do you advise?
So you're talking about early access?
Yes.
Yes. So I would encourage them to send an email to the gifted.education email address or to me, and because I usually am the one who answers those questions.
Right.
And we can have a one-on-one conversation about here, you could tell me the characteristics of your child, and then I can give you some feedback on normally students who qualify are doing this and that and this, or and then we can talk through the benefits of moving forward in the process or waiting until the child is of age to go into kindergarten. So, and I'd like to add that early access is one way, well, it's the only way to get into kindergarten early. However, once your child's in kindergarten, we have ways of testing and identifying students as early as kindergarten. And there are possibilities for grade acceleration at a later time, even if they didn't qualify for early access.
Okay, wonderful. All right, I'm going to check my email really quick and see if anyone has sent anything over there. Nope, not yet. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. So if you do have a question, again, feel free to type your question in the chat or email it to info@dcagt.org if you prefer to remain anonymous. And so one of the things that I was thinking of when you were talking about connecting concepts to real life, Heather, is when my daughter was younger, I purposefully had a paper calendar so we could talk about calendars and days. And I also purposefully had an analog clock so that we could talk about how time works and that it's not just like LED numbers on a screen. And my daughter is a middle schooler and she doesn't write cursive, but we would have a notebook that we wrote back and forth to each other just to practice our writing. And as she got like 5, 6, I purposely started writing in cursive so she could learn how to read cursive. So those were a couple of the things that we did that I found to be really helpful, because then as she learned those concepts in school, when she started school, she was able to say, well, we go to lunch at such and such in time, and this is the time on the clock, because her school had analog clocks. So she was like, okay, or we have PE at this time, or, so she was able to connect all those dots and sort of had a template for how her day was going to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that using an analog clock helps lead to that concept of elapsed time. So how much time do I have until we go to PE, or how much longer do we have in our day before I get to go home and see my mom, or my play date or whatever. And by having that time concept, that's huge. It's definitely a great benefit.
Yeah. And I found that also, like when we started cooking together, we would measure things together and then we would set a timer, and she would be like, well, if you set your timer for, over an hour, like the microwave handled it one way, and the egg timer handled it another way, and like the timer on the oven handled it another way. So those were just other conversations that she was like, oh, there are different ways to think about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And cooking is fantastic. It's not only just a great thing to do with your kids, but there's so much math involved. We would take our recipes and maybe we would double them, because maybe it was a recipe made for 2 people and there were 4 people in our family. So we would have to double the recipe. So having that conversation about, well, this is for 2, so we need to do twice as much. And then getting into fractions, where it actually made sense, was fantastic. Pizza and pie was a great lesson in fractions as well. So
Yes.
There's so much math in real life that it's a wonderful experience.
Yeah. And it's and cooking is fun. The other thing that we did, when she was probably a first grader or a second grader, we were watching home improvement shows. And so we would talk about, like, if you were going to put trim on your, around your room, like that's perimeter, and like, how do you measure that? So we got the tape measure out, and like, if you were going to get new carpet, like, what does that mean? And like, how do you figure that out? And so those were really fun too, because we enjoyed watching those shows together. And so she was able to be like, oh,
Yeah.
she's like, oh, to calculate if you wanted to buy paint for this whole room, like you would have to do every wall. I'm like, yes, you would.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, it looks like we have no questions.
Well, that's always a good thing.
That's right.
All right. Well, that's wonderful. I will provide a PDF of the slides to send to you to put up with your video. So
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you have questions later, you can always email Heather and ask, or you can reach out to me. Our next DCAGT Live is at the end of February. And we are going to be talking about how to help parents understand the COGAT. So we look forward to seeing you then. And thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. All right. Bye-bye.